Hello, and welcome to One Spark Stories, the podcast where innovators, creators, and some unsuspecting risk takers share about navigating highs and lows, laughter and tears, and how sometimes all it takes is one spark of inspiration to find your way to happiness. This podcast will leave you inspired to take action on your own purpose as we connect, create, and celebrate unique sparks around the globe, once again proving that it is a small world after all. I am your host, Katie Kearns, and this episode is a real example of how someone can go from navigating choppy waters to helping others calm their chaos. Michelle Baker is the co-founder of Stoneledge Enrichment, LLC, the creators of Aligned Leadership Approach. She brings 24 years in leadership experience as a former director of the Disney Institute and was an opening team member, senior leader, and officer with the Disney Cruise Line. Michelle is a Welch Scholar and MBA graduate from the Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University, and not only that, she is the author of Focused, Fit, and Fulfilled After 50. Michelle is an avid hiker and the mother to her son AJ, who is the incredibly talented co-founder of Stoneledge. She brings an incredible and unique lens to the issues leaders and organizations are facing this very day. If you are someone trying to figure out how to cultivate that top talent and take them beyond the daily management tasks and into those skills required to lead, or you're quite simply curious to hear the story of a woman that spent years on the high seas and now prefers the calm of hiking in the woods, then you have come to the right place. Get ready to be inspired by the one and only Michelle Baker. Well, hello, Michelle. How are you today?
Oh, excellent. So good to see you again, Katie.
Likewise, and it's so good to see you in this format where we get to just dig into a little bit more about you, what business you have growing rapidly right now, and a bit about your story and how leadership became such a passion. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I have to say this right up front, though. I think one of the things we're talking about meeting one-on-one right now. But when we first met through the Perch community, it's usually 15, 20 people on the screen. And for those of you that know you, Katie, your energy just shines through, even when there's 15, 16 people on the screen, whether it's just, being so open about how you share or about kind of giving people that recognition when they offer something that's really solid, or even just the support. So I hope that you know that, because I don't know if I've ever taken the time to share that with you.
You just spoke my love language. No, I really do appreciate that, because I truly do enjoy giving that energy and optimism and hope to others. So I'm glad that it is received that way. Thank you so much. Well,
Really,
yeah. Pulling back the veil is something that I do. And for years, I thought that vulnerability was making me look chaotic and messy. But what I've learned is through that vulnerability, others feel more comfort. Like, oh, okay, I get this. I've been there and we're all in it together. So thank you again.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. So I want to pull back the veil on you a little bit more, though, Michelle. And we are going to start with a few little sparks of fun about you. So First up is going to be your favorite childhood toy.
Favorite childhood toy. Well, the first thing that came to mind, I was an athlete growing up. We lived in the country a lot. And so random memory that just popped up, but I remember being 5 years old and going over to a neighbor's house, and parents were all inside doing whatever they were doing. I was outside by myself, picked up a baseball glove that had been laying on the floor, took the ball, threw it against a pitchback. Do you remember what a pitchback is?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 5 years old. So threw it against the pitchback, came back to me, popped in the glove with that nice little, sound, And from 5 years old on, I was hooked. I wanted to play catch with anyone and everyone that would take the time to just throw the ball back and forth. So when you said my favorite childhood toy, that was the memory that came up.
I love that. And there is something about that full sensory experience too that will just transport you. So, no, that is fantastic. And you mentioned that you grew up in the country area. Now, I also know that you've spent time traveling the world. We'll just say you've sailed the seas. Would you prefer to be countryside or waterfront?
That's easy for me. I love the ocean. I loved working on the ocean, but my soul is called to the mountains. And I want to say, I can't remember who said it. Forrester. I'm going to totally mess up who said it, but into the forest I go to lose my mind and find my soul. In a lot of places they say into the mountains I go, but the actual quote is into the forest I go. Robert Frost, possibly. But my soul is called to the mountains for sure. I love, especially I'm in Colorado right now, looking at the mountains here is gorgeous. I'm really drawn to the mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, that area. And so that's where my forever home will be, is in the mountains.
I love that. It's interesting because thinking about your history with Disney Cruise Line, you must have gotten your fill and you're still committed to the mountains. I love it. So then I want to ask, you've mentioned quite a few places stateside that you love. Where has been your favorite place to visit internationally?
Internationally, that's a tough one. I don't know why Canada came to mind. I just had some really beautiful memories of driving through different parts of Canada. Toronto's beautiful, Montreal is gorgeous, but the countryside in Canada in the summertime is absolutely gorgeous. And you just kind of get lost in the scenery up there. And so being from Rochester, New York, we used to drive up and through Canada quite a bit on different vacations. And so I know that probably isn't like the sexy destination, but just being in Canada in the summertime, where there's mountains and fields and rivers and waterfalls and everything is one of my favorite memories.
Well, I think that is perfect, and you have just the right reason to love it. I mean, the beautiful, calming, it all fits together, the calm aspect of it. So thinking about that, the calming places to be, the workforce right now is experiencing burnout, turnover. People are just exhausted. And so while I often might say what sparks your energy, what would it be for you though that calms your inner chaos? I imagine it has something to do with the mountainside, but what would it be that we could find Michelle enjoying when it's time to just zen?
My absolute most connected times ever are in the mountains hiking. I love the Appalachian Trail. I lived in Franklin, North Carolina for a pocket of time last summer, and it's only 15-20 minutes from the Appalachian Trail. And so I would go up on the trail and look for those big white blazes. And it's just being out on trail provides such peace and joy. I almost through hiked the Appalachian Trail in I guess it would have been last year. Planned it, bought all the gear, was going to do it. And then 3 or 4 months after retiring from Disney, realized just how much work it is to build a business from scratch. And so taking a 5 to 6 month journey where you're just like at one with nature, but not building your business at all. My son and I, who's the co-founder, decided probably not the best timing, but long-winded answer to your very short question, my happy place is definitely in the mountains on trails.
I love that. And I love the long-winded answers. I tend to be very good at that. No. So I think that's fantastic. And I want to visit the relationship with your son as a co-founder for the business. So share a little bit about what that business is and what you two have taken on with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a gift to be able to work side by side with a family member, and in this case, my son. And we literally work together every single day. And so I think that speaks to the level of comfort we have with each other in terms of sharing ideas back and forth, agreeing on things, disagreeing on things, being able to work things out. We both love this business, and what he brings is different than what I bring. So it's a really nice mix, and together we've been able to do some pretty cool things. The business itself is Stoneledge Enrichment, and we are so focused right now on the leadership side, and specifically the type of leader that people want to work for, the type of leader that helps people want to stay within an organization because they feel communicated to, collaborated with, cared for, and coached. And so we like to say, when you have that leadership in place, then jobs become careers again. Because even I think in our lifetime, we have seen this shift from you join a great company, that's the goal. Find a great company to work for sometime in your 20s, and then just build the career from there. You stay with that company for life. Unless something happens, you stay with that company for life. And now it's more about the experience. Where am I going to add value? Where am I going to feel valued? Where are they going to treat me as an individual? You know, what aligns with my core values, whether that's environmentality or giving back to the world, or, you know, just the products that are put out there, is that serving the greater? I mean, there's all these different dynamics other than this is a good place to build a career. And so our focus is on leadership, because we believe that leadership is one of the most important pieces of that entire puzzle. If you like the company you work for, but your leader doesn't spend any time developing you specifically, not the operation, not the bottom line, but you specifically, and you don't know how you fit into the vision or the mission of the company, they could be the most dynamic, you know, giving, carbon neutral organization in the world, and you still feel a disconnect. So I might not be able to help that, but what we do is we help leaders become those kind of leaders that people want to work for again. So that's the one side of Stoneledge. Probably about 80% of what we do. 20% of what we do, Katie, is really under the umbrella of self-care. And I know you and I were chatting about this a little earlier. Being able to have that mental and physical energy yourself so that you can help others, so that you can focus on the things that need to be focused on. It's not just eating right and exercising, though those are two critical factors. You have to make sure that mentally you feel safe and aligned and cared for and calm. And our motto there is we like to talk about calming inner chaos. If you can calm inner chaos, then you can unlock the ability to get in the shape that you want to have the energy that you want. But if you're working out at the gym 5 days a week, but your mind is chaotic and you can't put two thoughts together without going down a rabbit hole of self-doubt, then it's just not going to work.
It's like you've just defined my 6, 7, 8 years of experience for a while. And it's so true. I would bust my tail working out. I've always been a very active person, but was very involved in a group fitness. It was a business and I loved going there, but it was like, oh, I'm gaining weight. Well, it's because I was using that to quiet the noise and distract from the noise that was going on internally. And it was when I finally hit a wall and waved the flag and reached out for help that I slowed down. I actually slowed down to the point where I just started walking 2 miles a day. And in a matter of months, I not only made huge professional movement, but had lost weight that I had held on to for, I'm going to be so bold to say a decade, since before kids. So it's amazing. You are so spot on with the fact that we can work out, we can have wellness, but it's that calming the inner chaos that is going to be the key differentiator. And so I have a question with that. Was there somebody, or with One Spark, we're very big in the 3 C's: connecting, creating, and celebrating. And when you think about connections, is there a leader that you had worked with, or were maybe even just a colleague, that really helped bring that to light, whether it was the wellness and inner chaos side or the aligned leadership?
Yeah, that's one I'll have to think about for a second. But I usually trust my gut, the first people that come to mind. On the personal side, I think that I was having a conversation, in fact, with Valerie Cockrell not too long ago, and we were just talking about Robin Roberts, and she has this mantra about make your mess your message. And I think her mom had said that to her at one point. And so when I talk about calming inner chaos, it's not because I grew up sitting on a proverbial mountaintop, just meditating half the day and just having this Zen-like existence. It's because I've had my own share of inner chaos throughout most of my life. And I know that there's certain things that really do help calm that. And I also understand the connection between calming inner chaos and my happiness, calming inner chaos and my effectiveness as a leader, calming inner chaos and my effectiveness as a mom. And so I started really thinking about, different ways to do that and different things that worked for me. One of which was a good friend by the name of Rafaela. And I met her my very last week, actually, no, the last 2 weeks on board Disney ships. So I spent 2 years on board, almost all of it on the Disney Dream, the last 2 weeks on the Disney Fantasy. And Rafaela was traveling, Rafaela and Marie were traveling with one of the leaders on board. They came to visit. She is from Italy. And it was just one of those things where we started having conversations about, we didn't call it this, but we were having conversations about calming inner chaos and about mindfulness and about just alignment and meditation, spirituality, all of that. And we became very good friends, all of us afterwards, and we stayed connected. We're still connected to this day, and that was 10 years ago. But she almost opened a door to different ways of thinking about things. And she introduced me to authors and spiritual thinkers and, just a completely different way to think about life in general. And so I always thought of her as kind of like a mentor from a philosophical and spiritual perspective. And then from a leadership perspective, I've been really blessed with a lot of great leaders at Disney, like beyond blessed. I've been so lucky, even just having all of my career at Disney Cruise Line and the Disney Institute. So I got to work with leaders like Maria Fabregat, who's still at the Disney Institute, at Disney Cruise Line, Joanne Art. On board ships, I had some great leaders. And then Jeff James, best leader ever at the Disney Institute and Disney Cruise Line, and so on. But the reason why they came to mind immediately is not just because they, stood on the proverbial stage and said, okay, guys, this is what we're doing. They took a personal interest in developing me as an individual and helping me grow and helping me develop. And it wasn't always by just throwing sunshine, like, hey, you're just great, you're doing a great job. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is a change, or I'm giving you a stretch assignment that's really going to push you to your limits. And so I think that's a big part of leadership is communication, collaboration, and what I call courage, because courage means you can't be afraid to lead. You can't be afraid to give that feedback and push someone to the very edge of their capabilities so that they can stretch and grow.
Yes, I love that. And I think that is one thing I experienced early on with the Disney company, the Walt Disney Company, is that they are known for that intentional training and ultimately retaining people because of that. And just quality of leadership, quality of focus on all the people embedded in the organization. And would you say that because of that, as you started to work with others and we'll call it dabbling in the entrepreneurial world, did you start to notice that that wasn't the case everywhere? I'm just curious what led into the creation of Stoneledge and what led to the need to focus on aligned leadership?
Yeah, I love that question, Katie. And first of all, the quick answer is it's not the same everywhere. I think that Disney's really blessed with that level of leadership and brand identity and just talent. working with the Disney Institute, we worked with organizations literally all over the world and some incredible organizations. But we definitely saw that there was a gap in leadership. And if I had to boil it down to just two things, I think it really came into two basic buckets. One is leaders were just so stretched thin that maybe they really believed in developing their teams. Maybe they really believed in treating everybody as an individual. But when you've got, 20 pounds of work you're trying to put into a 10-pound bag, something's got to give. And if your boss is demanding these results, then what goes by the wayside? Coaching and development and individual care. So we saw that quite a bit. And then the other thing we saw a lot, and this is one of the things that we're focused on in Stoneledge, is when people get thrust into leadership for the very first time. It's typically because they're great at doing. I mean, they're just great at their individual roles. So when they get trained to be a leader, what do you think the focus is?
Within that position, I would think it's just making sure that the goal is met, that the sales, whatever that top dollar amount is.
Yep. It's like, yeah, here's the goals. Here's how to read the reports. Here's how to balance the timesheets. Here's how to prove time off. Here's all the things, the tasks you need to check off. But there's either not the bandwidth or the talent to say, by the way, we're also going to train you how to lead other human beings. We're going to teach you about, coaching and having difficult conversations and collaborating with your team and having the courage to step up and be that leader that people want to follow. And again, it comes down to bandwidth and priority. I don't think any of these companies were shortchanging leadership or the importance of it. They just didn't see the return on investment to put more talent into the pool so that those things could be taken care of.
Yeah, I definitely, as you were talking, my brain started to picture a leader I had once he was the first person that I will say allowed me to recognize leaders in an empowering position and not a ladder position, because everything he did, he involved the team. Even as a newer employee, as somebody younger in the field, he wanted us to be hands-on. Essentially, the idea being, work me out of a job, because as long as you all are inspired and energized, you're going to want to try new things, and we're going to be innovative and creative. And that to me is what kept everybody showing up each day, versus the ones where, as you were mentioning, it's task aligned. It's very much come in, take care of this job, report to me what you find. And then as positions open up, yeah, we'll post it internally. It's like, well, hello, now this really qualified leader, they already know that they have teams full of talent. So yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. And do you find that the longer somebody is with an organization, the harder it is for them to shift that perspective on leadership? Thinking of the groups that you may have seen coming through the Institute, that they were long-term career, even those with Disney for a long time. Is it hard to shift that perspective?
I think it is. And I think that it starts at the top. Just as an example, if the executive team makes it really apparent that the thing that counts more than anything is the bottom line. And the bottom line means, the revenue coming in, but it also means cost. So you're, as a leader, constantly being pressured on cost. And that's what gets rewarded, that's what gets recognized. Then it's going to be really hard to buy into a philosophy that says you need to pause from time to time, you need to take care of your team, you need to do these things. And still run the operation and still make sure that your guests or your customers are taken care of. Then what's recognized and rewarded is what's going to be repeated. And so I think that if that's the culture, and please understand that I'm not saying that the bottom line doesn't count, because most of the companies I've worked for and we've worked with, they're for-profit organizations, so you got to make your money. But it's a culture shift to be able to showcase that by retaining your talent. And sometimes that means an initial investment up front of making sure that you've got one more leader so that people aren't as stretched thin, or two more employees so that people aren't running around like crazy, and you've got time to coach and develop, then people are going to stay longer. So you're not on this kind of revolving door of hiring and firing. So yes, if it's just structured that way, and if that's the kind of the vibe of the organization, it's a little bit harder to switch, and it's really hard to switch one person at a time. It's almost got to be an entire culture shift to that new mindset.
Yeah, slow down to speed up. It definitely needs
perfect.
to happen. Yes. So it's not always the case that leadership is the one that can bring the solutions. I guess I could say they are very fixed. They know that this is the way it can go, and employees want to be engaged. They want to be part of the bigger purpose, but they are not aligned with that leader. So what it's happening everywhere. People are fried, leaders are toast, everybody is. So what would you suggest to the individuals that really have loved their job? And I hate using it past tense, but they're losing that spark in it. How can they maybe encourage their leader to shift their perspective?
Yeah, it's such an insightful question, Katie. And I think that this is probably not going to be analogous to what you're saying, but it's what came to my mind. It's one voice at a time. It's having the courage to say something to your leader, and then saying something to your leader again, and then hoping someone else will say something to your leader. And where I'm going with is, and I don't typically feel comfortable talking politics, but you see a lot of the things that are just happening in the world today, and it's the collective voices that are standing up and saying, we're not okay with this. And as a ripple effect, changes are happening, sometimes slowly, but they're happening. And I'm not saying on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. It's just
Certainly.
having the courage to stand up for what you believe in, one voice at a time, sometimes makes the difference. So, telling your leader, look, it used to be a collaborative environment. Now it's not. I don't feel developed anymore. I really need this in my life. Hopefully, if you hear that enough times, then or you see people starting to leave like they are at a regular clip, maybe change will come.
Yeah. And sometimes that change will come by you yourself opting to go a different route, because I think too often when we've been in a position that we've loved, or an organization that we really agreed with, when things change, it's not always guaranteed that they will go back. And so we have to accept it. We owe it to ourselves to say, you know what, I do have options, and it is okay. And with that, I want to go back to your journey and think about, with Disney Cruise Line to the Institute and now to owning your own business, what led you along that journey? And I'm really going to hope it wasn't a bunch of leaders that you were not aligned and it was just toxic and chaotic. It sounds like it wasn't the case, but I'd love to hear more about what that journey was for you, because while it's still under the same organization, those are very different entities within the business.
Yeah, I left Disney in, March 2021. It feels like a decade ago, and not 1% of the reason I left had to do with leadership. I was under the umbrella of some of the finest leaders that Disney has to offer, both at Cruise Line and at the Disney Institute. Loved my leadership team, and was given opportunities and stretch assignments my entire career. So I felt developed and cared for since day one. So that had nothing to do with it. My son and I were in California. Disney gave me the opportunity to go to California to lead the Disney Institute team on the West Coast for about 2 years. And during that time, he had a really good job at Whole Foods. I'm leading the team on the West Coast. We had this passion around what is now Stoneledge Enrichment, something that we really wanted to put together. And we're like, you know what, let's work on this. And we both tried to work on it part-time. And as a fellow entrepreneur, I know you can align with the concept of doing something part-time. It works for some, but it's really hard, especially when you're putting in a lot of hours at Whole Foods or leading an entire operation for the Disney Institute. And so we get a little traction and then we wouldn't, we get a little traction and then we wouldn't. So we ended up having just this really long conversation one night. I won't admit openly that Captain Morgan was involved, but let's just say
Oh, our
hypothetically.
mutual friend.
Mutual friend. Yep. We were sitting in the backyard one night. We call it Captain Clarity. But we were having this really long conversation about what's next for you, AJ, what's next for me. Go back to the East Coast, do this, what's next for Stoneledge. And after probably 3 or 4 hours of literally just sitting there in our backyard, just talking about it, we said, you know what, let's do this. Let's just do this. And we decided that the only way to move it forward and the only way to work on it together was to do it full time. And so I think I spoke to my leader within a couple of weeks after that conversation, just to say, hey, look, I don't know timing yet, but this is the runway of kind of our, like the off ramp, probably is a better way to say it, to starting my own business. Then COVID hit. And so I was actually planning on leaving probably sometime in 2020, which is when I first became eligible to retire from Disney. COVID hit. Right before COVID hit, Disney brought me back to the East Coast to lead a big, massive project for the Disney Institute. And I literally like escaped, almost like the Bourne Identity. We're leaving California as everything's shutting down, white
Yes.
knuckled on the steering wheel. We just got to get
Oh,
to
I bet.
Florida. We didn't stop because it was March 2020 that we drove cross country, and we didn't stop other than for gas because we were afraid that if we got a hotel somewhere, next thing you know, that state would shut down and it's almost like you'd be locked in place until things got better. But so yeah, so I ended up working through through COVID. I know it was a really tough year for many people, but I ended up working that entire time on a very small group of people at Disney Institute. And as soon as that started coming back around, I said, you know what, this is it. It's now or never. And so that's when we took the leap of faith.
And I think sometimes in those moments of uncertainty and chaos, and goodness knows we all felt it over that year, and apparently 2021 happened, that felt like a blur, but it's just, it's, it feels like in those moments of chaos and uncertainty, and when your back is up against a wall, that is truly when the most clarity comes. And you're like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going all in. And it shifts your perspective in a way that it's wild how things clear, how the fog clears. There's the hymns from above, and it's no longer nearly as daunting as it feels. And what would you say was your moment as you went all in where you thought, you know what, we made the right choice? Was there a moment that you recall where you're like, we did it, we were in it, and I'm glad we did?
There's so many moments. I can't think of just one. There's just so many moments. I wake up, I want to say every day, because that would be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I wake up, I would say 95% of the time, so excited to start the day, like so excited to do this work. And yes, a brand new entrepreneur, there's those 5% where you wake up and it's usually not in the morning, it's usually 2 a.m. and you're like, what did I do? Oh my gosh, but to wake up every day and feel so good about the business is great. I get really excited after a call of like the Perch community where we just shared a lot of great information, or just the energy was so high. I get excited after an account acquisition call with a new client where they're getting jazzed about the message. And so there's a lot of really cool moments, and it's just kind of scattered throughout.
And I think that that community aspect, the connections that you make through entrepreneurship, is something that I wish I had done more of early in my career. And I definitely have always been curious, hence having this podcast. I find people fascinating, but not enough people spend time diving into those connections as a valuable learning resource. The idea of, well, I don't want people to think that I got the job because of them. Forget that. Like, you earned this job, that person saw the value add. So lean into it. And I love that you've been able to see that throughout your career as well and have those connections.
Very well said. I love it.
So I want to take it back to my own curiosity. And I know I have plenty of memories from my time working with the Disney company and knowing the cruise lines. I'm a huge, we sail all the time. We're heading out again soon. We'll be on a cruise here soon. Was there a moment that stands out for you? And it could have been personal travel or your own experience working on the cruise line, or even Disney Institute, where you thought, this is it. This is why intentional purpose, why valued leadership matters, because as a guest, this just happened for them. This just made magic, created happiness in a way I could never have imagined elsewhere. Was there a moment or memory that stands out to you?
There's, quite a few. So I was just right place at the right time in casting one day, and I was hired to be part of the opening team for Disney Cruise Line. And this is before the first piece of metal was laid on the Disney Magic. And so this was July 1996. And both ships were actually delayed. So we had little over 2 years. July 1998 is when the Magic sailed for the first time. We had 2 years to bond and to watch artist renditions come to life in these pictures that were coming over from Italy and all of that. And one of the moments that definitely stands out, and to me, it ties back to leadership, but was when we all went to Port Canaveral, and a bunch of us rented a boat. So we were in the channel, and early, just as morning was breaking in the east, you saw this little speck on the horizon, and then the speck got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then next thing you know, the Disney Magic, which I get goosebumps even just thinking about it, but the Disney Magic was right there next to us. And it was just pure magic, pure magic. And the leadership team at Disney Cruise Line, from Art Rodney, who was the president, Tom McAlpin, who's now the president of Virgin Voyages, he was our VP of Finance, Maria Fabregat, joined all these leaders that just kept us going for 2 years. And never lose faith. I know it's hard. Yes, there was another delay. It's going to be okay. Keep going, keep going, keep going. They kept that team intact. Nobody left. In my memory, other than maybe one or two people, the entire opening team stayed intact and stayed together so that we could see the Disney Magic, and then the Disney Wonder come out. And that's hard as a leader, to keep that message strong when things are looking doubtful, or when things are hard, or when there's just uncertainty about, is this going to work? Brand new business for Disney, is it going to work? And of course the rest is history, because there's 4 beautiful ships at sea right now. The Wish is coming out, more ships on the horizon. But to me, it was the leadership team that kept us together.
That's awesome. And yes, it makes a difference when you get to see that project all the way through, regardless of whether it's me reflecting to being a teacher and I'm thinking, wow, my first graders are graduating. And even though I've been long removed, there's something truly magical about watching the growth, watching it, that vision all come together. So for my fellow visionaries out there, whatever that thing is that you keep seeing, it can and will happen. It's just aligning yourself with those people that will make sure you do that intentional behavior to see it through. So Michelle, we have so many reasons to celebrate you and all that you've been able to be successful in leading up to your new greatest success within Stoneledge Enrichment. But let's take a minute to celebrate something we haven't yet. What is it that we have not acknowledged? And it's sometimes something we don't do enough, is tooting our own horn. But what is something about you that you are so proud of that we should also celebrate?
Yeah, it's hard to turn it back around and say, and the answer that you hear a lot, and I think it's the answer you hear a lot from a lot of people, because it's just straight truth. I'm really proud of my son. I'm really proud of the businessman he is turning into. I'm proud of, just the human being he's turning out to be. As parents, I think it's really easy to also look back and say, I wish I'd done more of this, or I wish I'd spent more time on that. but he's a just wonderful person. And so I'm really proud of, and I was a single parent. I raised him on my own while working full time in corporate America. And yet somehow he turned out to just be a gem of a human being and a wonderful business partner.
Well, I'm guessing it's because you helped calm his inner chaos and he saw the value in it. And I know that, parenting is not easy, let alone as a working parent, but your kids can see what your core belief and values are. And that's why he's back as your business partner now. So I love it. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can they seek more wisdom and support when looking for that leadership alignment and wellness?
So our website is stoneledgeenrichment.com, all one word. My son designed it from the ground up, from the graphics to the, just everything. He's put a lot of work into that. I'm really proud of that. Stoneledgeenrichment.com. And then also on LinkedIn, just Michelle Baker, Stoneledge, you can find me.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to link those in the show notes. Well, thank you again. Is there any final thoughts, words of wisdom that you care to offer up?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Katie, you're just a wonderful host. And
Thank you.
I feel like I was just having a conversation with you for this last 30 minutes or so. So thank you for that. And no, the only thing I would say is just, calming your inner chaos is a great first step, because it all comes back to, in my mind, self-care. And it's taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others, so that you can become an entrepreneur, so that you can follow your goals and your dreams. Because if you don't take care of yourself, then everything else is just multiplied in terms of difficulty. So yes. I just can't stress that enough, to make sure people are doing whatever they can to practice self-care.
Yeah. Self-care is not selfish. Ever.
Well said.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Michelle.
You're welcome. Good to see you, Katie.
All I can say is, wow, a huge thank you to Michelle Baker again for coming on and sharing her journey through Disney leadership positions and how that has influenced the work that she's doing as co-founder of Stoneledge Enrichment. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to rate it and share it with anybody that you think could also benefit from Michelle's wisdom. I hope this episode helped you think more about what sparks you in the work you do, and how can you use that to continue to lead a life of happiness. Think about what you are doing intentionally each day that's better aligning you with your greater purpose. Be well and stay curious, and see you real soon.
Well, did you know that Japan has the world's largest bowling alley? And that my mom, if you subscribe to her podcast or follow, whatever you guys do, you'll be supplied with a lifetime of happiness.
Aww. Later, Tater.